More attacks on police officers in this country. It has to stop. We are going to explain why it's happening. Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, they're going at it in New Hampshire. Only one of them even has a chance to come out on top. And finally, some profound wisdom from the Oscars. All that's coming out right now on I'm Right. I want to do something a little bit different than we normally do, especially for the opening of our show on a Monday. Look, I know you've all got a case of the Mondays. It's raining all over America. It's been a long, hard day, and you tune into this show to be entertained. You want to be informed and entertained and laugh, and we're all going to do that, but just hang with me for just a moment. I want you to picture your Monday as being this. You wake up, lean down, kiss the wife goodbye, rub your kids on the head on the way out the door, and you turn around and you tell them you love them, and you head off to work. Only you don't head to a normal job, ladies and gentlemen. You head to a job where you are a New York City police officer or any big city police officer. Do you know what your life is like from there? Your life is watching out for your rear end, watching out for your buddy's rear end all day long. Your job is to wade through the muck. Your job is to go apprehend the crazy person on the side of the road on drugs. Your job is to try to care for the homeless while forcing them to go certain places where they're not allowed to be. Your job is to respond to calls, domestic abuse calls, where you're not sure what's behind that door. Your job is to every single day encounter drug addicts and murderers and rapists and burglars and the worst society has to offer. Only it's not just one day for you, ladies and gentlemen. It's every single day. You wake up, kiss the wife, say goodbye to the kids, and you know that there is a chance, an above average chance, or I should say more than the regular citizen's chance, that you'll never come home again, that they might not see their dad or their mother again. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the life of a big city cop. That is the life they live. On top of all that, you know that if you do have a bad moment, let's say you are in the wrong, you use some bad judgment or maybe even good judgment, there will be somebody on the side of the road with a cell phone camera. I got it. Let's put it on Instagram. Let's destroy this guy's life. Someone find out where his wife works too. Let's go ahead and get her fired. You'll become famous for all the wrong reasons. Everybody in the media accuses you of being power hungry or a racist or both or some kind of scumbag. That is the life of a big city cop. On top of that, if you're a New York City cop currently, you don't have the mayor of the city on your side. Do you have any idea what that would be like, ladies and gentlemen? Do you think it's an accident across the nation? Recruiting numbers, especially in the big cities, are plummeting. Police departments are not able to meet their quota. Who would want to do a job like that? Do you remember it just wasn't that long ago when people were throwing water on the cops in New York City? Bill de Blasio has lowered the respect level for police officers in the city of New York. Look at that disgusting video. He's lowered it to the point where people feel free to chuck water on them in broad daylight. Now, you cannot want some kind of, draconian police force taking a baton to everybody's head. But ladies and gentlemen, if that's where you are as a city, if that's where we are as a nation, we're in very, very, very deep trouble. And look, I wish I could say it's just water. Take a look at this video. I'm not going to talk over it. This is from the 41st Precinct in New York. How about an assassination attempt on cops? Look at this. This just happened, by the way. I'm sure you saw the news about it on the weekend. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that you're witnessing right there is a shootout and an assassination attempt of cops in New York City. I turned on the news this weekend for the first time, and you know what I see? A cop in the hospital who got shot in the face and neck by somebody attempting to assassinate him, and that's far from the only instance of violence against a police officer, and especially in the last year or two. It's a disgrace. And speaking of this incident, Donald Trump took to Twitter and said, quote, "I grew up in New York City and over many years got to watch how great New York City's finest are. Now, because of weak leadership at governor and mayor, stand away, water thrown at them regulations, and lack of support, our wonderful New York City police are under assault. Stop this now." De Blasio, of course. By the way, I should say, how funny is it that we now watch all political arguments take place on social media? That's just weird, right? We had former CIA director and current United States Senator from Kentucky, Rand Paul, arguing on Twitter the other day in public for everybody to see. It's bizarre. Anyway, de Blasio, of course, responds in public on Twitter. Our city is hurting right now. The only appropriate response is thoughts, prayers, and solidarity with our officers. This is no time for division. Well, that's the problem. You're the enemy in their eyes. Don't believe me? How about this from the Sergeants Association, the New York City Sergeants Association? Quote, Mayor de Blasio, the members of the New York Police Department are declaring war on you. We do not respect you. Do not visit us in hospitals. You sold the New York City Police Department to the vile creatures, the 1% who hate cops but vote for you. New York City Police Department cops have been assassinated because of you. This isn't over. Game on. Those are some extremely strong words from him. Oh, and by the way, here's the former New York City Police Commissioner.
Nobody wants to do their job and not be indemnified and supported by the mayor. And we have seen in this city, especially with Garner and some of the other incidents, where the mayor himself does not support the men and women under his command. So the cops think about those cameras. They think about what's going on in their profession, what they have to do. And are they going to put their lives on the line? Are they going to put their families on the line? They're going to put their home on the line because the city, the mayor, the department will not back you when you do your job. You know, it's a rough time to be a cop, and we're seeing this in New York City. We're seeing it around the rest of the country.
We are. That was former New York City Police Commissioner Bernie Kerik. And let me tell you something, people. Overall, stepping away from just New York City, overall, we are seeing this in Baltimore. We're seeing it in cities in California. We are seeing these far-left politicians who at least used to pretend to be pro-cop now flat out run on anti-police rhetoric. And when they get in, they put in anti-police policies. And you heard what Bernie Kerik said there about their families. Remember what I said at the very beginning of this segment? That's what cops think about. That's what you would think about, right? Would that not always be on your mind? Am I going to get home to my family tonight? And so what's happening? They're leaving. Cops are leaving. They're either signing up to do something else, or they're heading to the suburbs, places where they're appreciated and backed up by the people in authority, which is horrible. I mean, good for the cops, good for their families. I don't blame them one bit. I'd be out in the burbs myself. But it's horrible for beautiful, wonderful places in this country like New York City. And look, I've lived all over the place, country, city, you name it. People can bag on New York. New York's awesome. New York's historical. New York is fun. It's crazy. It's wild. I love going there. Every time I visit, it puts me in a good mood. I don't want New York to turn into Escape from New York. I don't want to turn it into a third world dump. I don't want San Francisco having to dodge poop on the sidewalks. This is not the way it should be in the United States of America. And what stinks is we are heading that way faster and faster. It's not going the opposite way. We have these radicals. De Blasio has been a lifelong radical, finding themselves in positions of power. Yesterday's crazy street radical who you made fun of as he was throwing blood on some lady wearing furs in college, that person's now the mayor of New York. That person's now a United States senator, a United States congressman. That person's running to be the Democrat nominee for president of the United States of America. What I'm saying is this dangerous trend is bad for the country. And it's not only because I feel bad for cops like New York cops. I feel bad for New York cities. New York City is never going to be rural Texas. I realize that. But it's also part of America's fabric, an awesome part of America's fabric. And I know a lot of you country people are not going to agree with me, but I want New York to be awesome. I want New York to stay awesome. For a while, New York was an absolute rundown dump. Then we had mayors like Giuliani come in, get the streets cleaned up, one of the safest places in the country. Now, you can chuck a gallon of water on a police officer with no repercussions. Now, people hate the cops so much, they're attempting to assassinate them. I saw this morning somebody put out a statement that off-duty police officers should not wear their badges, not wear their uniform, not reveal themselves to be cops. If that's where we are as a country, if that's where New York City is as a city, ladies and gentlemen, that is a criminally sad state of affairs. And this is the problem. All these left-wing policies in all these cities going beyond just the cops. the endless poverty, the endless cycle, welfare after welfare, rundown dump after rundown dump, and then more government and more taxes and more government and more taxes. When are we going to wake up one day and realize maybe these policies aren't good? Maybe we should choose a different direction. I hope the people of the city of New York rise up and toss this guy out on his rear end. I hope they toss people who think like him out on their rear end so we can go back to the Big Apple being the Big Apple. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I'm right. Coming up, we have Deanna Lorraine. She's running against Nancy Pelosi. Maybe you're just a little bit interested in seeing Nancy Pelosi go like I am. We have an absolute hilarious final block of the show that you're not going to want to miss. We're going to do a big New Hampshire state of the affair. State of affairs? State of the affair? I'm just going to say state of the affair. It's my show. I can make up my own phrases. Anyway, that's coming up soon. Joining me now is the lady who is running against Nancy Pelosi. Yes, that is right, ladies and gentlemen. She is our hero. She's Deanna Lorraine. Now, Deanna, I'm not going to ask you to list all the things that made you want to run against Nancy Pelosi because I only have a 1-hour show, and Lord knows that would take 3 or 4 days. But yes, what is the one thing, if there was a one thing, that just absolutely set you off and you're like, you know what, that's it. She's got to go down.
God, that's such a tough question because you could literally have a book about how many things. You know, this is a trick question, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
It was probably her spearheading the impeachment trial against President Trump. That was one of the biggest things that angered me so much because she's so divisive and she's already dividing an already divided country even more with her backwards. Hope I can say this, but her priorities are just so freaking backwards. And then I'll just give you one more thing. The whole Gender Equality Act that she was pushing last year was something that really angered me too, because it's going to actually put women at a disadvantage in the future. And not only that, but it's just, again, we're focusing on the wrong priorities. We're focusing on, what bathroom we should go in, what gender pronoun we should use, and whether we should impeach the president or not, who's done nothing wrong, instead of focusing on the real problems that real Americans are dealing with. And I'm so damn sick of it. And everything that comes out of her mouth, everything she does, how does your blood not boil? How does anyone not feel like you want to fight against her?
But how could you oppose the Gender Equality Act? You are very clearly a woman. Don't you want to be equal?
Look, first of all, we're already equal in God's eyes, first of all. And secondly, we are very different, and I like to keep it that way. You are a man, I'm a woman, and for many, many years, it's worked. And by the way, before feminists ruined it, women actually got special treatment. Women actually were more revered and respected, and that is a fabulous thing. Men bring their worth, women bring their worth, and feminists just want to ruin it all. Nancy Pelosi's at the head of that, too.
I talked in the opening about what's going on in New York City with the cops and the criminals and de Blasio and all that. And really, I took a step back with it. And what bums me out, and you know this because it's where you're running, is some of our most beautiful cities. Like, I love New York City. People bag on San Francisco because there's a bunch of crazy people out there. San Francisco's a beautiful city with great food and great buildings. And I hate watching these cities rot under lefty leadership. It drives me crazy.
Nancy Pelosi is the embodiment of cultural rot in America, and she is leading the charge on the rotting cities left and right. I mean, San Francisco, of course, used to be a beautiful city, and there's so many beautiful parts to it, but let's be honest, homelessness has increased 17% just in the last year. The trash, feces, I mean, there's a feces map that tells you where the human feces are on the streets. I mean, I'm pretty sure grandparents wouldn't have even thought that would be possible 30, 40 years ago. And she's leading the charge on this. It's all gotten worse under her watch and under Democrat policies. When are people going to wake up and learn, hello, Democrat policies lead to a country? Again, hopefully I could say that. But Democrat policies don't work. They lead to socialism. They lead to lawlessness and crime, homelessness, and a lack of unity in our country. We've got to get our country back, and it starts district by district. Even if it's a tough blue district, you guys, we have to run, throw ourselves in the fire, and miracles can happen, because even if it seems like a David and Goliath mission, like myself and Ms. Pelosi, greater things can happen, and we just have to stick together. We cannot wave the white flag of surrender, or else we're not going to do anything. We're not going to accomplish anything.
Yeah, we all know how David and Goliath turned out, by the way. By the way, I have to ask. People think they have this complete misconception about places like San Francisco or California in general or New York, and they think to themselves, well, they're all Democrats. It's all blue. I try to explain to them, just because I've been everywhere, that's not necessarily the case. And in fact, a lot of these places, they have some of the most right-wing, furthest conservative people you can imagine because they're so beaten down and angry at this point in time.
Yeah, I think they're coming out of the woodwork. Actually, there's a lot more of them in hiding, especially when Nancy did her little antics like last week, ripping up the State of the Union speech. Excuse me. Oh, well, she might as well be ripping up the Constitution too. She does that every day. But yeah, when she does those things, people are coming further and further to the right. They're just so tired of it. Those things just make them so fed up, and they say, "Look, why are we still doing this?" And the thing that I did last week with the plane, that was a little bit of a test drive to see how many people are really around here that share my values and are also fed up with it. So it was kind of my little test drive to see who's going to be coming out of the conservative closet there.
You had to know I was going to ask about the plane. Who came up with the idea for that? We played it on the show last week before I even knew we were having you on, and I laughed hysterically. We dedicated a whole block to it. I think that's just the best thing in the world. Is that your idea?
That was my idea.
Okay.
It was my idea.
All right.
And
now, everybody thinks the country is hopelessly divided.
Right.
Are we so divided that there's nothing we can work with Democrats on? Let's say you pull off a miracle and you bounce San Fran Nan out of there. If you can do that, is there anything that you can look across the aisle with Democrats, even if it's a tiny, tiny issue, and say, hey, let's work together on this and help the American people out?
Absolutely. And that's the thing. I think a lot of our issues are actually bipartisan issues that we all can get behind. I think things like crime, right? Lowering crime, reducing the homelessness and coming up with a bipartisan solution for that. Criminal justice reform, right? That's something I think is a bipartisan issue. The opioid crisis, which is ripping through families and ripping apart families from children, from their parents. That's something that we should both be able to get behind. The high prices of prescription drugs, medical marijuana, right? Potentially legalizing marijuana. There's so many issues that I think we can get behind. One of the most important things, though, I believe, that is not spoken of at all is restoring and strengthening the American family unit. It is so broken right now. There's so many fatherless homes. There's an epidemic of fatherless homes. And the broken family unit is the root cause of literally every single societal problem that we're facing right now, from mass shooters to homelessness, the rate of incarceration, crime, mental health, drug addiction, right? There's so many issues, rape, sexual harassment. The left and feminists say, me too, we have to reduce sexual harassment and rape. Absolutely. But we need to actually have an honest conversation about the state of the American family unit right now and how to put policies and practices in place at the policy level and at a cultural level to strengthen the family unit so we have less fatherless homes, less broken families, and less rape, less sexual harassment, less homeless, and all these other things. But we're not talking about it. We have not had an honest national discussion about the state of the American family unit, and it's time that we have that. That is something that I'm championing. It's part of my platform, and it's something I would absolutely make at the forefront of the conversations if elected into Congress.
Deanna, thank you so much for joining us today. Good luck to you out there.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks, Jesse.
Joe Biden is going down and going down quickly. We'll assess New Hampshire and give you the skinny on what's going on there. Hang on. Well, if it looks like I'm smiling, ladies and gentlemen, that's because I'm excited about talking about Joe Biden some more. And look, I have every right as an American citizen to treasure every single second of this Joe Biden talk. Why? Because, ladies and gentlemen, it ain't going to last much longer. The ship is not sunk yet, but let me tell you what. They are loading up the lifeboats and they are taking on water, and the distress signal has been sent and the Celine Dion music is playing in the background because people, he is going down and he is going down real quick. Joe Biden's still doing town halls inexplicably. Here's him discussing AK-47s.
No, and by the way, those who say the tree of liberty is watered with the blood of patriots, a great line. Well, guess what? The fact is, if you're going to take on the government, you need an F-15 with Hellfire missiles. There's no way an AK-47 is going to take care of you if you're going to take on, you're worried about the government coming down, knocking down your door. And so it's bizarre. We never said you could own any weapon at all from the beginning. You can't own a machine gun. You can't own a bazooka. You can't own an M1 tank. No matter how much money you have, you can limit the kind of weapons that are able to be owned. And so I think, and by the way, all the work I've done on this, including in our administration, I now have over 58% of the NRA members acknowledging you can't own an assault weapon. There's no need for it. You can't have a magazine that has more than 10 rounds in it.
Well, it's going to take me just a minute to unpack everything that was horrifically wrong about that. First of all, let's address the F-15 and Hellfire missiles. F-15s do not have Hellfire missiles. One would think Joe Biden, who's been in Washington, D.C. since George Washington crossed the Delaware, would be aware of little things like that. Two, an AK-47 ain't going to do any good when you're fighting the government. Somebody should probably tell the Viet Cong that. Somebody maybe should tell the Taliban, who we've been fighting for 20 years with Hellfire missiles and special operations and every fancy gadget underneath the sun, and we're currently negotiating with them in peace talks to try to exit the country where they will then take over. A lot of people have won a lot of wars with AK-47s. Three, it's not just the blood of patriots. That's not the way that the quote goes. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. And when people cite the Second Amendment, they pretty much like to focus on that part because the Second Amendment was not about hunting deer. It was not about protecting your home. The Second Amendment was so the United States government could never turn despotic and turn on the American people. I know that may make you uncomfortable, but once again, I'm right. And for him to say, well, it's always been this way, you've never been able to, that's not necessarily the case. Throughout the history of the United States of America, most of our history, you could own any weapon the government could own. Why? Because the founders knew you might have to take on the government. Again, this is stuff people don't like to talk about. And you certainly can't bring this up when you're running for office. Well, we need reasonable regulations. No, we don't, actually. Not at all. Oh, in case you thought I was done, Joe Biden is screaming at reporters again. Here he is when he's asked about Hunter.
The Justice Department is vetting information from Rudy Giuliani about your son's work in Ukraine. Are you concerned a federal investigation may be launched?
Rudy Giuliani.
Are you concerned a federal investigation may be launched? Are you concerned a federal investigation?
No. Look, I expect Trump to do the same exact thing he's been doing. Why has he been attacking me from the beginning? Why did he risk, and he should have been impeached, why did he risk getting convicted by going to a foreign leader to say, you don't have to give me anything on Biden, there's nothing to get, just tell me that you're going to investigate him so I can hurt him? Have you ever seen a sitting president as concerned about a single nominee and trying to stop a nominee?
Do you think your son is fair game, Mr. Vice President? Do you think your son is fair game here?
His son or my son?
Your son, Hunter.
I don't think our sons are fair game at all. No one has said he's done anything wrong except the thug Rudy Giuliani. Come on. Rudy Giuliani? A character witness?
Mr. Vice President, speaking to voters...
Well, I don't know what was more awkward about that. Joe Biden continually interrupting the reporter or him constantly saying this line. Who told him this is a good line? Nobody's saying he did anything wrong. You remember he yelled that at, I believe it was Savannah Guthrie last week. We played the clip for you on the show. Nobody said he did anything wrong. Joe, if everybody's asking you the question, lots of people think you did something wrong. I mean, why can't he just be bold about it? And this is a lesson actually every politician on the left and right can take from Trump. Do you want to know why scandals don't really trip up Trump? Because they're baked in the cake and because he owns most of them. He doesn't come out with these stupid, idiotic lies. Trump is full of flaws. He just doesn't pretend like he's not full of flaws. Joe Biden, the second all this Hunter Biden stuff came out, should have went out and said, I did it. I got him a job. He's my son. I love him. He's kind of a moron. I thought a $50,000 a month job would do him well. No, he wasn't qualified, but I was vice president. They did me a favor. And you know what? The scandal off of that would have lasted about 24 hours. Instead, he's done this idiotic thing where politicians have done something wrong. Everyone knows he did something wrong. Everyone's asking him about doing something wrong. And he does this thing where he's like, well, no one said I did anything wrong. Joe, your son Hunter sat on a board where he had no experience in what they do, and they paid him $50,000 a month while you were vice president. Then you got caught on camera saying they had to fire a prosecutor or you wouldn't give them foreign aid. You know, the exact same thing they just impeached Donald Trump for. Just drop this. And by the way, to what Joe Biden just said about everyone's scared of me. They're all scared. Joe, you're polling down by Amy Klobuchar in New Hampshire. Ain't nobody scared of you anymore, Jack. You know when I mentioned at the beginning of the segment about how the ship is sinking? Well, the sharks are swimming too. But don't worry, Joe Biden has a plan. He's just going to call some supporters more names.
So you're arguably the candidate with the greatest advantage in this race. You've been the vice president. You weren't burdened down by the impeachment trials. In the participation. So how do you explain the performance in Iowa, and why should the voters believe that you can win the national election?
It's a good question. Number one, Iowa's a Democratic caucus. You ever been to a caucus? No, you haven't. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you. It was a little bit confusing in Iowa.
A lying dog-faced pony soldier? Wait, what? And so obviously Pete Buttigieg, who is now either in the lead or in second place, depending on which poll you believe in New Hampshire, he smells blood in the water. He's going after Biden. Biden now realizes Pete Buttigieg is taking over that kind of moderate lane. He's now going after Buttigieg.
Barack Obama called Joe Biden
best vice president America's ever had.
But Pete Buttigieg doesn't think much of the vice president's record. Let's compare. When President Obama called on him, Joe Biden helped lead the passage of the Affordable Care Act, which gave health care to 20 million people. And when parkgoers called on Pete Buttigieg, he installed decorative lights under bridges, giving citizens of South Bend colorfully illuminated rivers. Both Vice President Biden and former Mayor Buttigieg have taken on tough fights. Under threat of a nuclear Iran, Joe Biden helped to negotiate the Iran deal. And under threat of disappearing pets, Buttigieg negotiated lighter licensing regulations on pet chip scanners. Both Vice President Biden and former Mayor Pete have helped shape our economy. Joe Biden helped save the auto industry, which revitalized the economy of the Midwest, and led the passage and implementation of the Recovery Act, saving our economy from a depression. Pete Buttigieg revitalized the sidewalks of downtown South Bend by laying out decorative brick. And both Biden and Buttigieg have made hard decisions. Despite pressure from the NRA, Joe Biden passed the assault weapons ban through Congress. Then, he passed the Violence Against Women Act. And even when public pressure mounted against him, former Mayor Pete fired the first African-American police chief of South Bend. And then he forced out the African-American fire chief, too. We're electing a president. What you've done matters.
Oh, sorry. I didn't. You remember last week when I told you about how great the Bloomberg ad was? Yes, I disagree with everything in it, but it was clearly a good ad done by professionals. That wasn't. One, it was way too long. Bro, you're not monologuing. It was like 3 minutes long. Cut that daggone thing down. Two, what's with that horrible music? The awful, like, weird elevating music. It was just, the whole thing was bad. This campaign now is getting sad. So again, I got to talk about Joe Biden today. I don't think I'm going to get to do it for much longer because I think after New Hampshire, he's probably just going to bow out. Until then, I give you my word. I'm going to make fun of him every chance I get. All right. We got a Delta Force guy coming up. Hang on. We only like to bring you the best of experts on this show. That's why I'm here. And that's why my next guest, Tom Satterley, is here former Army Special Operations and author of All Secure, a special operations soldier's fight to survive on the battlefield and the home front. Tom, could you please elaborate as best you can the burden felt, especially by our special operations guys, in this war on terror, or whatever you want to call this war we've been fighting for the last 20 years? I see these guys, 10 deployments, 12 deployments. I can't even wrap my mind around that many. I didn't like doing one.
Yeah, I think the burden is, I look at it like 10% of the military does 90% of the work, or even 2% does 98% of the work, and they deploy over and over and over again. And through my years of watching my guys line up and get ready to go the day we were deploying, you'd walk by the team rooms, and in the early on years, guys were motivated, packing gear, looking around and checking kit. Towards the end of those years, guys were in there doing shots and hugging each other and kind of doing that countdown till this is probably the last one. So that burden is heavy, and nobody would ever say a thing about it. Nobody would ever let you know how heavy it actually got.
What is that mentality? Because look, I'm not naive. I understand that mentality, that, suffer in silence, suck it up and take it mentality, is part of what makes you. It's part of what makes you guys tick. At the same time, it can hurt when you come back and guys need help. I mean, these guys may be the toughest dudes on earth, but they need help and they don't ask.
Yeah, that was the sketchy part for me. And what I'm finding out is everybody else. We think it's weakness. We think it's a sign of weakness to ask for help, when really it's a sign of strength to admit that you need help to get better. We did everything we could in the military to be better at it, and the entire time we'd never felt good enough. At least I know I didn't, and almost everybody I talked to says the same thing. They never felt good enough, so we used it as a tool to do better. However, it was destroying us the entire time on the inside with those feelings of insecurity and inferiority. And oh, by the way, when you walk away from it, you've lost that entire tribe of people that you identify with, and now you feel even more alone.
What do you get? What is available to you when you get back? All right, you're Tom Satterley. You've done everything underneath the sun. You get out. You now need resources. You now need help available. What do you have to go through to get it? Is it easy? Is it hard? Is it getting better? What is the situation?
I don't remember much information coming my way when I was getting out. I just remember they would send you to the VA, or, they would tell you about your physical. Don't try to be hardcore on your physical. Now's the time to whine about it. And I had a tough time with that, even because I could hear them telling you to talk about every injury to try to get more money. And we weren't wired that way. I don't remember any help being handed down at all, because nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to even ask for that kind of help. Get out and fast forward years later, when people are killing themselves at a 22 or higher a day. And some of those were friends of mine, and that number is growing. And then, oh, by the way, those getting killed in combat, and the families that are breaking up due to divorce and arguments and abuse. That's why we started our foundation, was try to help the system. The system's huge and broken. The VA services 21 million veterans or more, 25 million veterans, I think. And you get what you pay for. It's free care, and it's intensive. The lines are long, so you're going to wait. And people that need this kind of help can't wait that long.
No, that's a fact. Can you elaborate just a little bit for me on the burdens families do feel? Because look, everybody likes to talk about the troops, especially when it's convenient for someone. The troops this, and support the troops. And everyone loves the guy with sunglasses on, looking like, a Green Beret happens to look. But nobody thinks, at least they don't think enough about the wife back home, the kids back home, all the soccer games missed, all the guidance, basic maintenance around the house. What is the burden like on a family when you're somebody who's deploying 10 times?
That burden is tremendous, and I myself never considered it. It was looked at like, I'm doing my job, you do yours, and my job's harder, so therefore yours must be easier. And of course, you go home and you say that to your spouse, and you're going to get smacked upside the head. But I didn't want to do that job. I chose to go back to work as often as possible to prepare and get ready for as much as I could. Everybody I know chooses to go to work. And if you think about it in the civilian world, even CEOs of big corporations and anybody that excels in their job neglects their family life at home. So those spouses, you grow apart. Those spouses have their own system set up. And then when we come home, we try to interject like we just left, and we're going to put those rules back in place, and we're going to take over. And they really kind of get tired of you interfering with that life to where the point where the jokes come out. When are you deploying again? When are you leaving again? Because they have their life down and you kind of come up and disrupt it. So that's why we really work on reintegration with the families when you come back home, because you're really getting to know that person all over again.
Couple more guys died this weekend. I believe it was this weekend, if not right beforehand, in Afghanistan. I don't know. You and I have never spoken about this. I don't know how you feel about that. I will just tell you, I'm disgusted by it at this point in time. I don't like that we have the best forces in the world over there dying for a mission nobody can seem to articulate to me, with no plan to stay, no plan to leave. How do you feel about it?
It's upsetting. I don't want to shoot myself in the foot and talk about, pull them out now, pull them out now. And I tell people we're still in Japan and we're still in Germany after all of those years to help rebuild those nations and to maintain stability. And then obviously, of course, money. However, right now it seems to be politics and he said, she said, screaming at everybody. So the guys on the ground are wondering, what is the real reason and when's the end game going to start? Because I've been here 20 years. We already got it down. The new guys are coming in. It's new combat for them. But what is that end game? And when you don't have an end game on the ground, you don't have a goal that you're fighting for that's more specific than America's freedom and your freedoms of this or your freedoms of that, or to stamp out terrorism. What specifically are we over there dying for? Because that gives the fighter a greater cause to, throw himself at. I know we had specifics when I was in that we're going for certain people and certain factions, and now it's grown so much, it's hard to nail down what it is we're really chasing. So if you can't put your finger on that cause right away, then your heart's not in it. Then you're not going to fight as hard, and you're going to wonder why you're there. And then that causes all kinds of morale problems.
Now, I understand I'm going to ask you to speak about a branch that wasn't yours, but the Navy SEALs the Navy SEALs need no introduction to anybody. Everybody knows about Navy SEALs. There's 8 trillion books and movies on the Navy SEALs, but they've had plenty of, I know you guys like to laugh about that.
Right.
They've had plenty of bad publicity, especially in recent years. Now, I realize some of that is people just don't understand, that kind of mentality, but some of it obviously is grounded in fact. And we had that horrible thing take place in Mali where a Green Beret got killed, apparently by some SEALs and a raider. What I'm asking is, do the Navy SEALs, do they have some kind of a problem? And if they do, what is it? Is it a fame problem? Is it a youth problem? Is it just all this is overblown? What is the issue, at least within your community?
I would tell you that the thought in our community is that it's a maturity level. Every organization has problems. Every organization will have issues. Every organization will have those that turn to drugs or abuse their pain medications. Not every organization has people that murder people, but that's those decisions and that thought process that is going through those individuals with PTS, or whether they've been deployed or not. They could have secondary PTS if you're raised by your commander that has PTS and his moral and ethical meter is broken or skewed a little bit, if you will, and they pass that on down. And the families, we call it secondary PTS for the spouses and the children who are also committing suicide and making poor decisions. But when you have a leadership issue of immaturity or a leadership issue of oversaturation of combat and moral injury, so you're showing these younger guys a different way to do it, or you're not teaching them all the right things, that's when it unfolds into murder or drug use or, too much media attention that's negative. Maybe a lot goes with the fact that they're more public and they're more open and out there, that you're going to see more. If you look for it, you'll find it for sure. But I think that those issues are throughout all services. Maybe not as bad as those incidents that you're speaking of, but I know that there are incidences in all these services that guys are having trouble with making proper decisions, whether it be DUIs or just other alcohol-related incidences or arguing with people at bars about combat or who does what job. I mean, we seem to be turning against each other a lot lately.
I hate to see it. All right, your foundation, tell people about it.
Yeah, All Secure Foundation. You can find us at allsecurefoundation.org. And we help special operations combat warriors and their spouses or significant others recover from the horrors that they've seen in war. We help them with reintegration back into the family. We give them tools to notice and identify the triggers of PTS, how to stop that shame and anger cycle that everyone talks to us about. Why am I so angry? Why do I take it out on my wife and my kids? I want to work on my relationship. So we decided that instead of sending a veteran to Disney or taking him on a hunting trip, we'll help the entire family rebuild that foundation for a stronger structure. And then, of course, within the next year, 2 or 3, hopefully sooner, that's funds dependent, obviously, would like to work into the children as well and try to help these special operations combat families come back together so they can all feel better at home and live a healthier, happy life.
Tom Satterley, thank you so much for giving us some of your time today, and obviously, thank you for your service.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right, we have some profound words of wisdom from the Oscars last night. Hang on. Last night was the Oscars. How do I know this? Because the wife took off to the other room to watch it while me and the boys watched war movies, because I'm not watching that crap. Joaquin Phoenix won the Oscar, won the Best Actor. This is a family show. Won the Best Actor Oscar for The Joker. Highly recommend The Joker. That's one of those movies you should watch once, but man, it was really well done. He did really great, and he got up there to give his acceptance speech, and boy, did this one really hit home.
We feel entitled to artificially inseminate a cow, and when she gives birth, we steal her baby, even though her cries of anguish are unmistakable. And then we take her milk that's intended for a calf, and we put it in our coffee and our cereal.
Let's not let these people make political decisions. We're going to do this again tomorrow. We'll see you then.